What's up, guys? It's Jan for Chess24. We are covering the Candidates Tournament 2018. Finally, 8 of the world's best players have qualified for the event that shall determine the next challenger of world champion Magnus Carlsen in the World Championship match. In round 1, there was already a lot of bloodshed, a lot of drama, and the game we shall cover in this Game of the Day video is the game between Fabiano Caruana with the white pieces and Wesley-So with the black pieces. The two US Americans, typically compatriots, play each other in the early rounds in such events to make sure they don't get into murky situations if they have to face each other in the last round. I don't think it matters much, but that's how it's done in such tournaments. Fabiano Caruana with the white pieces goes for the move 1d4. Fabiano, considered one of the favorites for this event pre-tournament, had a very bad outing in Vaikanze, the last super tournament he played, so people weren't sure about his form. Wesley-So has been reasonably quiet throughout most of 2017, so he's going to have some convincing to do to make it on the list of favorites. But he is considered to be a player that is extraordinarily hard to defeat. d4, knight f6, c4, e6. And Caruana shows, first of all, that he is not interested in seeing what Wesley-So had against the wolf 1e4. And he's also not interested in discussing the Nimzo Indian. He goes for the Catalan, an opening that another player who is in this tournament, Vladimir Kramnik, put on the map throughout the last 20 years and has found many, many followers. Wesley-So plays a maneuver that might look a little strange at first sight, but that will transpose one of the absolute main lines, bishop b4, bishop d2, bishop e7. He's luring this bishop to d2 because there's many lines later where white would prefer to have it on c1, so he could fianchetto it after b3 and bishop b2, which is not possible since it's here, obviously. Bishop to g2, d5, knight f3, short castles, pawn to c6. This is one of the main theoretical positions of the Catalan, where most often people play queen to c2. Sometimes you also see knight to c3 or bishop to f4. But Caruana plays a bit of a sideline. He plays the move queen to b3, covering his pawn on c4, obviously. And the queen position on b3, of course, has some drawbacks. On c2, the queen would help fight for e4, but also has some pluses. If we take the game continuation, for example, knight b7, bishop to f4, and we look at the natural enough move, pawn to b6. Then after knight to c3, I believe bishop to b7, white often goes c takes d5. And here, this is not the game, but just to illustrate why this queen is useful here. After c takes d5, for example, white can start occupying the c file without the queen standing in the way. The queen will also support a knight that would jump to b5. So there are some points to this queen's position. But there are also some drawbacks, and Wesley-So is intending to expose one of them by playing the move a7 to a5, saying your queen might not stay there for very long, because I shall chase it around by playing a5, a4. I've had this position myself a long time ago, in 2005 against Joel Otier, and I played a2 to a4, mechanically stopping black from pushing his pawn further, but that leaves a bit of a hole on b4, and probably is not suited to fight for an advantage. Caruana plays a better move. He plays the move rook to d1, not showing his cards just yet. If you are wondering why not knight c3 to stop this a4, the answer is because it doesn't stop a4. a4, knight takes a4, d takes c4, and unfortunately for white, he can't take here, because after b5, queen c6, rook a4, black emerges with an extra piece. Therefore, knight c3, not the best idea. Instead, rook d1 played, and Wesley-So plays another typical maneuver. He says, you know what, I'm not in that much of a hurry to go a4. I understand you'd be fine going back. But instead, please, your bishop looks very active on f4. Please put it on a more passive square. The bishop goes all the way back in order not to block the rook. And Wesley-So says, okay, mission accomplished. I'll return. I'm assuming you don't want to repeat moves with the white pieces. And Caruana says, you're right, I indeed do not want to repeat. Plays the move knight b to d2. Now, maybe changing gears a little bit, expecting to get pushed by a4 when he wants to go queen c2, and then probably play for e4 in the second. So says, okay, still no hurry. I have a little trick. I'm gonna go b5, grab some space on the queen side. What do you think about that? The point is that after c takes b5, c takes b5, queen takes b5, black goes bishop a6, that captures the pawn on e2, which would favor him structurally. Therefore, Caruana says, all right, let us close the position on the queen side. I'll claim a bit of a space advantage with this pawn on c5. And from now on, the battle will resolve around the question, can black go e5 advantageously and blow up this white pawn chain? Or will e5 never work and maybe white will even be first to go, let's say queen c2 and e4, and claim an edge. So starts with b5 to b4, preparing for this bishop to have a nice view on this diagonal, but it doesn't really contribute towards the goal of achieving e5. The computer says queen c7, just intending to push e5 directly, was the best way. When the line it gives is something like this, pawn to a4, pawn to b4, knight b3, which optically looks a little bad for white to me. But after knight to g6, the computer sees no particular reason to complain. So that might have been the most precise way for Wesley-So to arrange his pieces. But instead, he's on a free bishop mission, goes b4, queen to c2, hinting at e2 to e4, which would no doubt have been played after bishop to a6. Therefore, Wesley-So plays a move that indirectly stops white from going e4. He plays a move a4. Now, you might wonder, why does it stop e4? The answer is black has a little trick here. He has the move b4 to b3. If white takes, black would exchange his flank pawn for a juicy central pawn and get a very decent position. Therefore, not what Caruana has in mind, and he delays the move e4, showing a lot of restraint. Plays rook to e1 first, saying, you know what, one day I will play e4, if you allow me to. And So says, I can't wait for that. I'll go e5 myself. Which is not losing a pawn after d takes e5, knight e4. Would recover that pawn, but instead it leads to a significant change of structure, because after knight takes e5, played and the best move, knight e5, d, knight d7, black will regain his pawn, but white can make sure that the pawn that black gets is the c5 pawn and not the e5 pawn by playing knight to f3. And if this e5 pawn manages to stay alive as it does here, then it can be a bit of a, what do you call this, a spearhead for a white attack on the king side, because it secures white a bit of a space advantage on this side of the board. Now Wesley-So first of all has to decide how he wants to recapture on c5, and my computer says he decides wrongly. He goes bishop takes c5, allowing this knight to jump here. Knight takes c5 had its own drawbacks. It's a bit clumsy, and after bishop to e3, black has to play rook to a5. But apparently the position would still have been quite tenable. Knight d4, bishop d7. And nothing too bad seems to happen to black. Instead, bishop c5, knight to g5 threatens, in a not very subtle manner, queen takes h7 checkmate, forces black to go g6, weakening some dark squares around his king. Not a move you want to play. Caruana develops, goes bishop to f4, and Wesley-So plays a counter-attack move, the move queen to b6. Which has its own drawbacks though. The queen goes far away from the king side, does not really control the e6 square. So during live commentary I thought that queen to e7 would be a more resilient option, but the computer points out that after queen e7, e4 still very nice for white. One key point being that after d4, turns out white doesn't need both his e-pawns, he just needs one of them. He goes e6, fe, e5, thereby freeing all his pieces. This bishop becomes a powerhouse on the long diagonal. The black king gets weakened, h4, h5 is in the air, knight to e4 looks very annoying, so the black position would be extremely hard to defend already here. Therefore, Wesley-So thinks, okay, queen e6 it is. Caruana covers the f2 pawn, of course, by going e4, the move you want to play anyway. And once again, d4 would run into e6, this time even more unpleasant for black than with the queen on e7. Therefore, So starts muddying the water, looking for counterplay by going b3, pushing the white queen around. The queen, however, has a fairly decent new home on f3. And that's where Caruana starts bringing it ASAP. f3, nice square. Covers f2, keeps an eye on f7. Helps the attack. Already a tough position for black to defend. My computer does not see a lot of great options here. It keeps changing its mind. First it wants to go rook a2, but then after e6, f, e, d. It seems like white is crashing through too. So that's not a solution. Maybe the black position is already almost beyond repair here. But Wesley-So comes up with a very logical maneuver. He goes bishop a6, intending to put the bishop, ooh, I can't draw arrows, on c4. Queen f3, of course, bishop c4, at least keeping an eye on this diagonal. Rook takes a8, because after rook takes a8, the black rook is lured away from the defense of f7, while the white rook might have a role to play in the events to come on the e5. Rook takes a8. Here, at first I was tempted by the move knight takes f7, when if black had to take this, white would win. King f7 does not work. e6, king e6, and there's many different ways to get the job done. e d5 probably the simplest. Check. King f7, bishop c7, winning the queen. However, in chess, we are not forced to capture opponent's pieces immediately, and de4 would be a lot tougher. Knight h6 check. King h8. And it turns out that there's no easy way for white to recapture. Rook e4 allows rook a1 check, and queen e4 drops f2. So black would stay very much in business after knight f7, d4. Caruana finds a different way to make progress though. He goes for the move e5, e6. F takes e6 looks like the most logical move, but that is fairly well met, as you can see by the engine bar going crazy, by bishop to c7, or bishop b8 if you want to be fancy. But bishop c7 is plenty good. Queen c7, queen f7, king h8, queen h7, checkmate. Can't do that, therefore after e6, so once again has to rely on this Zwischenzug d takes e4, so his bishop can maybe do some work along this diagonal. E takes f7, bishop f7, and knight takes e4. Still doesn't look so horrible for black. Material is equal after all. But it turns out that the weakened king, that has lost one of his defenders, the pawn on f7 here, the king on g8, is the main factor. And also all the white pieces are ready to jump into action on the king side. Well, not all the black pieces are ready to join the defense. Especially this queen is not doing very much. Therefore, what So should have done is at least include the rook into the defense ASAP by going rook e8, pinning this knight. White keeps the pull, but the battle would have continued after, let's say, rook to d1. Instead, bishop to d4 is played, but that is probably the last mistake of the game, because now this knight gets a chance to enter the dream square d6, ruling out knight e8, rook e8 for good, and setting up all kinds of threats against the f7 bishop and the light squares in general. Bishop to d5 played. Caruana just calmly retreats, goes queen e2, defends f2, intends to go bishop takes d5, followed by queen e6. There's precious little you can do about it. One line that looked logical to me is queen to a5, keeping an eye on this guy and preparing bishop d5, queen d5. But it turns out that white just wins after rook 1. There's just nothing that black can do. Queen c5, rook c1, queen a5 back, bishop d2, and white manages to make sure that this queen can no longer keep contact with the d5 bishop, and if it goes somewhere, let's say here, then after some more moves, white just wins. Knight to b5 is coming. Black cannot defend. Therefore, the black position is surprisingly hopeless after the calm queen to e2. No matter what you do, bishop g2 just gets punished by queen e6, king h8. And it's checkmate reasonably quickly, for example. So was this the fastest way? It is checkmate at the very least. Once again, too many attackers. Instead, after queen e2, So tried knight to f8, keeping an eye on the e6 square. But the white says, you know what, the d5 square is good enough for me. And the rook says, you know what, the e7 square is just as good as the e6 square. It turns out there is very, very little that black can do here. The game actually ended after queen to a5, attacking this rook. Rook to e7, because it turns out there's not much he can do about bishop h6, followed by queen f7 and checkmate. Example being rook to a7, bishop h6 anyway. Rook takes e7, queen takes f8, checkmate. Therefore, after rook e7, Wesley So through the towel, resigned here. And yeah, this game is a sign of good form by Caruana. It might not be too flashy, there weren't any big sacrifices, but it's just class, directing his pieces towards more aggressive positions and outplaying a super strong defender like Wesley So without any sacrifices. It's in the style of some of the best games by Magnus Carlsen, who many a time also, without giving a single pawn, just puts his pieces on superior squares and delivers checkmate. So Team Fabiano came armed. They must have concluded that this type of position is playable for white. And then, when there were some small inaccuracies to exploit, Caruana made no mistakes. In fact, I saw somewhere that he played the last 19 moves with the first choice of the computer, something like that. So Fabian Caruana is in excellent shape, calculating, and will be a force to be reckoned with in this candidates tournament. There's still 13 rounds to go, so let's not hand it to him too quickly. Some others also play very nice first round games and won. But it is certainly a little tip that Fabian Caruana means business this time around. If you want to see more candidates, why not join us in the live commentary every day, starting 3 p.m. on chess24.com. I'd be happy to see you guys there. Bye. Oops, this is German. Here, the candidates, not die Kandidat. See you later, bye.